The following is a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about them Cowboys?
Yeah, go Cowboys!
Let's go, baby!
Are you ready for a break?
Yes.
Are you ready for a break?
Absolutely.
Ready for a break?
Yeah, and so much for that.
It's time for The Break on DallasCowboys.com
We were on the break!
with Nick Eatman, David Hellman, Ambar Garcia, and Derek Eagleton.
It is Wednesday, December 15th, 2021, season 17, episode number 79. Welcome to the latest edition of The Break. We are live from the SWBC Mortgage Studios at the Star. I got Dave and Amber with me. Nick is out today, but we have filled the spot with the man, the legend, Mr. Isaiah Stanback. We give you an opportunity to be on a real show.
Wow.
And have an opportunity.
We're going back to that, huh?
This bizarre rivalry between a whole bunch of people that work together.
Yeah.
Kind of love it.
We love having you on the show, Isaiah. I know you and I got a chance to do a show back during the time we mixed the shows up during the bye week, but good to have you back with us. We have a lot of stuff we're going to talk about today. We are not going to be joined by Bucky Brooks today. He's going to join tomorrow and give us his takes on Cowboys versus Giants. We figure because the Giants are so bad, we can put that all into one day. We don't need two shows for that.
Do not say that. We have learned a very hard lesson.
No. Back up. I did not say that because they're bad doesn't mean that Cowboys can't get beat. What I said was they're bad. And so I think it's pretty clear they're bad. Now, we'll see what happens on Sunday, what that means to the Cowboys, but they're not a good team. Anyway, we're going to get to Bucky tomorrow, but today we're going to talk a little bit about Giants offense versus Cowboys defense. We'll talk a little bit about some other topics. We didn't get a chance to get to what Jerry had to say about Dak Prescott yesterday. We'll talk about that a little bit today as well. I'm sorry, not Nick. Dave.
I don't like that.
Wow.
No offense, Nick.
I was about to say, you might want to not just kind of put him out there.
I'm my own man, okay?
You are
That's
your
all
own
I'm
man,
saying.
Dave, and you're a unique man. Give me a 79 real quick.
I think it's pretty obvious. Harvey Martin. And I love Harvey Martin for it's a cool thing about this job. I just turned 33 yesterday.
Happy birthday.
Thanks.
Did you have
man.
a good birthday?
I had a great birthday.
That's awesome.
I didn't know anything about Harvey Martin when I started working here. Sorry. I know that sounds blasphemous here, but
I didn't either.
Yeah, but you work here and you learn the history of the team and you're like, oh my God, this guy was a badass.
I was embarrassed when I finally figured out who he was and what he'd done that I'd never heard of.
Same.
Him. But growing up in Houston, I'd never really heard of him.
There's so many legends around this team. I knew Staubach, I knew Pearson, I knew all the 90s guys, but you can't know everybody unless you're like a diehard fan of this team. Super Bowl MVP, 114 career sacks. I think he's 32 in career sacks.
Yeah.
I don't know if they even tracked him for most of his career.
I don't think they did, yeah.
Defensive Player of the Year, 4-time pro.
He was a legit player.
At the very least, he's got a Ring of Honor. What's the word I'm looking for here? He's got a case for it.
Yeah.
And he probably has a case to be in the Hall of Fame as well. And people don't really talk about him. So shouts out to Harvey Martin, 79.
No doubt about it. All right. Let's jump in. We are going to first I wanted to get catch up on a few things. Coach McCarthy just finished talking to the media. He did say that there were going to be some practice modifications today. Dave, what was he talking about there?
I think that, and this is the type of thing that happens anyway. You get late in the year, there's fewer padded practices. Everybody's beat to hell, and I just think they're kind of dialing it back. This isn't going to be. Some coaches, not so much these days because it's in the CBA, but I was listening to somebody talk about this the other day. Some coaches are like, no, we're in pads no matter what. That's what we're going to do. But the more and more you get into this and learn about player health and try and keep people healthy, you dial some of that stuff back. So. I think this will be more than a walkthrough, but not your typical. We're not getting after it in pads and hitting each other here. So I just think they're trying to preserve the roster a little bit.
Isaiah, how many more years could you have played in the league if they let you take the pads off and have these kind of practices?
This schedule is just different. I'm still back locked into my old school methods. We're out there, 3 days a week with pads on, and these guys now they're just running around with sweatpants on half the time. But
is it better?
Is it better?
The way that it's currently being done?
On your body, yes. On your body, yes. I'm not in the locker room, so I don't know how it's really affecting these guys. I just know that we we were physical. It was a lot more physical back then, and it's a lot more ticky-tack now. So I think it kind of offsets each other, right? The physicality was dependent on you being physical throughout the week, and that carried over into the game. Now these guys aren't allowed to be as physical in the games, and it's kind of showing up on the practice field too.
Yeah, I can't remember. When you came in the league, were we still doing two-a-days?
Real
you were
two-a-days.
still doing, yeah.
Yes.
Because I remember two-a-days, and it was a different kind of training camp because it consumed your entire day because even from our standpoint, I mean, you got 2 practices that you're covering in a single day. It was a lot more different. And obviously, we weren't on the field having to run around twice a day, but I assume that beats up
that
your
was
body.
in season?
No, I'm saying during training camp.
Oh, training. Okay.
2-a-day practices during training camp for that entire 4 or 5 weeks that we'd be at training camp. And there weren't these built-in day off every 4 days like it is now. Like, it was a very, very different world.
But they did, or correct me if I'm wrong, like, not that long ago, it would be normal in December to suit up in full pads and beat the hell out of each other.
Especially depending on the organization that you played for.
Right.
You were in New England. Was that the most intense that you ever experienced?
You were in pads.
Every day.
You were in pads.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, all the way up until, to Friday practice, which is a jog through.
Yeah.
Even then, we would probably still have shells on. So it's just the culture of the team.
Yeah.
It's just the culture of the team, and it's evolved, right? These coaches are evolving. They're changing. I'm sure Coach McCarthy back in the day probably had his guys in pads all the way up into it, but the CBA allows for certain things that have to change, and this is just one of them, man. The game's changed.
Yeah, and it sounds like they have gotten smarter with the use of analytics and the tracking devices they use, so they kind of know how much stress each player is putting on their body, and they know when it's time to dial them back.
I'm not going to go as far as to say it's the only thing he cares about, but Mike McCarthy, like the analytics of his player usage is very important to him. Like he talks about it all the time. Like he's always talking about like the GPS numbers on like how much a guy ran at practice, how fast he was running, how much work he was putting on himself. I think he studies that stuff religiously. And you hear people talk about the STAY program, which is what they call the weekly method where like they don't practice Friday, they do mental health stuff, and it's all more of a mental aspect of it. Like he's big on that stuff, and he's talked about it before. Like he ran some Green Bay teams into the ground, and this is like the natural learning curve of that.
Another question was asked to him with regard to the health of the team right now. There's only really one player, Tyron Smith, that's not practicing at this point, which is remarkable for a team in December.
And given the week that we're having around the league right now,
no doubt,
no COVID updates either.
Yeah. The only one they got right now is Cedric. He's the only one that's on the COVID list. And we're going to talk a little bit about COVID a little later. I have some questions for you guys on that. But that all being said, I do think there's still kind of this lingering, what's up with Zeke? Like, how is he doing? And he was asked that question. What did McCarthy say on Zeke, and kind of what do we feel about where Zeke is at this point?
I think Zeke is probably going to be where he is. I mean, we talked a lot about let's get to this break after the Saints game, and he did, and he said he felt better. He looked better in Washington. Would y'all agree with that? He looked better. He didn't look yes
better.
Better.
Yeah. We're qualifying this. Yeah.
He looked better. He looked a little more sprightly. He had a little extra burst, but I think he's going to be banged up until this season is over, if I had to guess. Maybe on the outside chance they can earn a bye week, that could help out. But I think, and that's kind of what Mike said, is Zeke's fine. I mean, he's not magically 100%, and he probably won't be, but he's going to continue on this path that he's been on, I think.
Yeah, I'm disappointed. I mentioned this earlier on Talking Cowboys. I'm really disappointed that they missed the opportunity to give him 17 days off. They had an opportunity to give Zeke 17 days off a couple weeks ago, and they chose not to, right? And when they chose not to, and then they brought him in the game and used him for pass protection primarily. So now you're faced with a situation where you need Zeke, right? You need the running game because the running game, we're seeing the effect it has on Dak, okay, or the lack thereof of the running game. We need Zeke. When we need him most, he's not anywhere near healthy. What percentage would you say Zeke is right now?
60.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
I think Zeke's 60%. And I truly believe that the opponent that we're facing this week, there's an opportunity based upon what we saw last week with Clemens. He came out and he was shifty, he was explosive, he had all the things all the makers of a running back that can run in his backfield. I think there's an opportunity to rest Zeke and Pollard this week and get them healthier going into this last stretch. And then if you're somehow able to secure the division, right, and take care of the Giants and Philly loses, hopefully, then you have another week at the end of the season that you can rest your guys, right? This isn't about, I shouldn't use the word rest. I should use the term, just getting guys healthy.
Yeah.
Zeke is not going to be a contributor to this offense aside from his ability to block if you don't get him some time off.
And I don't necessarily disagree with anything you said, but I've been saying on our show this whole time, like, I just don't think you can afford to. And it sounds completely unsexy, but like that ability to block is important. Like even like for example, even this bad Giants team, Azeez Ojulari, they got this rookie edge rusher who's got 8 sacks. He might be the talk of the division if Micah wasn't doing what he's doing. You gonna send Corey Clements and Ito Smith up there to keep Dak on his feet? I don't know, man. I don't know about that.
I hear you, and I understand the fear. But I think that if Kellen Moore is what we say that he is, he can scheme around that. I think it's more important for Zeke to get his rest going into the end of this year than it is for us to sit back there and utilize him 15 plays out the game for sitting back and pass blocking. Yeah. If Kellen Moore can't figure out how to block that up without Zeke back there, then we have some bigger issues.
Without Tyron too.
Without Tyron too. I mean, but this is why these guys are professionals. These guys have a job to do, and the Giants aren't scary, right? I feel like we're evenly matched against them with our offensive line right now. That sounds bad, right? But that's just the way it is, and the replacements that we've had to put in place. But we need Zeke healthy, and we see even with Zeke. Would you say that he contributed to the last 2 games? Honestly.
He contributed on Sunday.
I don't think it was. I don't think it was to the level where without him you would not have been able to do something.
That's what I mean. Yeah. I would take a 100% healthy Clemens, and I would take a 60% Zeke. If I know that I can get Zeke to be a 75% next week.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I'm looking at, because right now Zeke was running the ball. He looked better. To your point, he looked better until what? He took a shot on his knee. Where did he go?
Bench.
And that's my problem. That's my problem with all of it is it seems like over the last 2 or 3 games they've limited the amount that they're using him, but it's always in every one of those games there's a moment where he takes a hit. Yep. And so to me it kind of restarts the clock on him getting healthier. And so if you're going to do that, just take him out and just don't worry about that and let those other guys have to step up and provide what you need for a week or 2 to give him that extra rest so that hopefully he's more healthy.
Counterpoint. Yeah. If you handle your business against 2 teams that you're better than, you could have 2 weeks where they're not meaningless, but like you've done what you need to do. Even the Arizona game, and especially the Philly game, probably. Facts. And so, like I keep saying, gut through it. You should win against New York. You should win against Washington. And then maybe you can make those types of decisions once the playoffs are 100% secured.
I feel like we tend to overcomplicate things sometimes. And I know it would change the preparation during this week, and it can change and increase potentially an injury depending on how much they use them. But let's say limited practices, goes in, you still have him activated, and then depending on how the game is going, you decide whether to use him or not. It's against the Giants. We said that. I think that the Cowboys, and they've shown otherwise sometimes, but I think they should be very capable of handling their business without Zeke on the offense this week. But if needed, in a case of emergency, can you just have him there on the sideline, ready to go? And I know it doesn't necessarily work that way because health-wise, there are certain protocol that you have to go through with your body to be ready to step into the field. But how difficult is that really to just have him as a backup there?
I will say this, and Isaiah, you mentioned earlier, give him and TP some time, but I personally think if you can get Pollard back this week, that becomes the impetus for me to say sit Zeke. Don't even suit him up, because I look at it and say I've got Tony Pollard, who I think is running as well, at least as well as Zeke right now. And so I got him, and I got these other supplemental backs that I can use with him. And to me, that should be enough for the running game for a week or 2. And so if Pollard is ready to come back, I think that's the impetus for me. I don't love the idea of going into a game without either one of them, even against the Giants, just because I do think you want to be able to run a little bit better than what they're going to get out of those guys. But I do think that, if you got Pollard back, that becomes my reason to say do it. That
makes sense, but the reality is Pollard's injury that he has right now, that's not going away.
Right.
That's not going away. It's not going away. That plantar fasciitis, if anybody who knows, and
it just has to get to a point where
probably isn't going away.
Zeke isn't going away either. Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. But by continuing to wear on it, it gets worse.
Yeah.
right? So by giving these guys time off, you're allowing them to, it's like a video game, right? You know what I'm saying? It's like the fishing line. You throw it out there, and then, you get the tension on it, and then it eventually it's gonna pop, right? Yeah. But if you ease up off it, guess what? You restore your sources. These guys need this break, and it's built in. It's built in. TP is not healthy. If you wear him out, then you have something that can get substantially worse. Zeke. We see Zeke is a shadow of himself, and there's no disrespect to Zeke. He's giving it everything that he has. There's a lot of guys playing with a lot of injuries right now around this NFL. Yeah. Dallas Cowboys are not, and Zeke is going to play through this thing if they allow him to. Sit him down. Don't take the decision out of his hands. Sit down. We need you. If there's anybody in the Dallas Cowboy Nation wants to talk about playoffs right now, you need a running game. And I don't believe that our running game against the Giants is going to be dependent based upon the skill set of the running backs that we have. It's going to be more based upon the offensive line's ability to create holes.
Yep. You make a compelling point, my friend. I mean, and if you listen to the show, I'm good at this. Like, I can turn the worst team into like a world beater in my mind. I'm looking.
This one's hard to do.
It is, but if there is a place where I look at it, I'm like, okay, there's some guys there.
They don't have Leonard Williams. Like that's the guy you would normally be worried about. Right?
Dexter Lawrence is still a good player. Is he? Yeah. He's available, right?
Yeah.
Get Ojulari. He doesn't have the stats, but Lorenzo Carter's been a pretty decent player for them. They really like Georgia edge rushers for some reason. Yeah. But no. You make a compelling point. I mean, they're not. I guess the other thing too is they're not going to do it. That's my big. That's why you think I'm boring because I'm just like, why are we talking about this? They're not going to do it.
But that's why we do talk radio.
I know that's why we do talk radio. You're right.
So we can talk about things
that is a compelling point. Although I'm still inclined to be like, let's play these games when the East is actually secure instead of sort of secure.
All right, we're going to take our break. When we come back, I want to talk about Jerry Jones and some comments he made yesterday. I think they got a little overblown. We'll talk about it when we come right back. This is DallasCowboys.com radio.
At AT&T, everyone, new and existing customers, get our best deals on every smartphone. Why? Because you deserve it. For turning your living room into your office and your gym. For teaching grandma how to video call. And teaching her again.
It's the button on your left, Nana. Okay, your other left.
It's not complicated. Everyone deserves something new. So AT&T is giving everyone, new and existing customers, our best deals with every unlimited plan on every smartphone, even the latest ones.
AT&T may temporarily slow data speeds if the network is busy. Restrictions and exceptions may apply.
Hi, I'm Clint Tillison with...
And I'm Jay Novacek. And we're both with...
United Ag and Turf, the official tractor provider of the Dallas Cowboys.
So, if you need a tractor to bale some hay, a mower to cut some grass, or a gator to get some chores done...
Get a John Deere at United Ag and Turf.
And then, let's get to work.
Hey, Jay, that's my line.
Well, not today.
Get to work with a John Deere tractor package that's just right for you and your budget. Visit UnitedAgAndTurf.com.
Before there was a draft, you could size up a cowboy by 3 simple factors: the crease in his hat, the bend of his brim, and his unbending attitude. A man Stetson didn't just protect him from what life threw at him, it projected a rugged, unstoppable spirit. Stetson hats are still American-made with pride right here in Texas. They're still the unofficial crown of all self-respecting cowboys, and Stetson is proud to be on the field with America's team. Find a retailer nearest you at stetson.com/cowboys.
New Dr. Pepper Zero Sugar. You deserve it.
I do deserve that.
You deserve decadent flavor without sugar, and a day at the beach without sand getting everywhere. And a relaxing bath that your children don't interrupt.
I deserve all that?
It's really just a visual metaphor for Dr. Pepper Zero Sugar. Everything you want, nothing you don't.
A visual metaphor on the radio. I do deserve that.
Dr. Pepper Zero Sugar. The zero you deserve is finally here.
Back to the break.
Good. Celebrate Christmas at the Star with Cowboys Christmas Extravaganza, powered by Reliant. The 20-minute show electrifies the Star in Frisco with a powerful mix of game day excitement and Christmas cheer. Don't miss the final 2 shows on Friday and Saturday. That's this Friday, December 18th, I think, and 17th and 18th.
17th.
Admission and parking are free. For more information, visit thestardistrict.com.
And there is a chance.
You're welcome.
There is a chance that if you come out here Friday, you might just run into one Dave Hellman as he's heading to his car to leave.
I run into somebody damn near every Friday.
Yeah.
Like I'll walk through the district, or maybe I got to go to the gift shop to pick something up for somebody. And
the gift shop is the place to hang out. If you're trying to just run into people,
yes,
that's the place to hang out, because there are a bunch of people. Yesterday I was in there, and a bunch of people I ran into that work here. They're just in there shopping because it's time of the year where employees can get a discount.
My friends know that I get a discount, and so I'm in there
waiting for you at the car.
I'm in there every other week. Like, hey, my dad needs this, my sister needs this.
Yeah, that was a great perk when I was playing here. You know, you take the family to the store and the balls, and
so you get the calls from all family friends need the Cowboys gear.
Yeah.
To
like,
quote,
hey, can you hook me up?
Give Jerry his money back.
To quote the great Mark Ingram, come see me.
Yeah. Check it out. Check it out. It's a good show.
I thought you were going to say Dave's lighting the tree.
Dave is not.
Not this week. Not this week, but we're working on it. Maybe one of these days we'll have Dave lighting the tree.
Dave needs to be getting paid to be here after like 3 o'clock on a Friday.
Yeah, I don't even think that's going to keep you around.
Probably not. Probably not.
3 o'clock on a Friday. All right, let's jump back in. There were some comments that Jerry made yesterday on 105.3, The Fan. He was on with RJ and Sean. And here's, I'll read to you the quote. And then I want to get some comments from you guys with regards to what you thought of it when you heard it. He said, I don't want to say that. He was asked about Dak, whether Dak is in a slump. He says, I don't want to say that slump, but that's probably fair. But it's such a multifaceted evaluation that I would say our offense is definitely away from where we were playing 5 or 6 games ago. Now, I think the narrative that came out of that was Jerry Jones says Dak Prescott's in a slump. I listened to the interview. I didn't think that's what he was saying. What I thought he was saying was, it's fair for you to say that. I don't want to say slump, but let's just say the offense, because it's a much bigger evaluation than just the quarterback. Let's just say the offense is not playing as it should be playing. Maybe the offense is in a slump, but I don't think he was saying that Dak was necessarily in a slump. What would you guys say? What was your take as you heard that quote?
It reminded me, Mike McCarthy was asked the same question, and he basically said the same thing without as juicy of a soundbite. He was like, I don't believe in slumps as a football thing, which a slump is baseball.
Yep.
Hitting,
Yeah, no doubt.
You're not hitting well. It's
Even
you
basketball.
You against the pitcher. Yeah, how you're shooting. And McCarthy, he said it on Sunday. He said it a bunch of times. He's like, this is the ultimate team sport. This is 11 on 11. There's a million reasons why these things happen. And I think Jerry was saying the same thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's fair and obvious to say that Dak is not playing up to his standard over most of the last 5 weeks. Mm-hmm. Fourth quarter against Vegas, and I'm drawing, and the Atlanta game. Atlanta game. 2 times out of the last 5 weeks, he's not even 2 times. 1 quarter in 1 game out of the last 5 weeks, he's been great. Other than that, he's been bad. Yeah. And so, I mean, maybe they don't want to call it a slump, but we can recognize that.
For the last 4 to 5 weeks, I've been the bad guy around Cowboys Nation saying that Dak is off. And Dak, his mechanics are off, his decision making is off, and everybody's like, "Oh, you're a Dak hater and you're a Cowboy." No, I call it like I see it. As a former quarterback, I've been noticing these things. His decision making has not been on point. He's been hesitant. He hasn't been more proactive in terms of crossing line of scrimmage for whatever reason. It's like a invisible boundary right there ever since the calf injury. His release point has been off. We saw that with the interception to Collins the other day. He's forcing plays. We saw that to a couple plays where he should have been intercepted the first drive of the game, and also he tried to force a screen pass in there the other day as well. That should have been picked off. He's in a slump. He's been in a slump, and it is to Jerry's point. Jerry's been trying to save him. Mr. Jones, I respect the crap out of him, but for whatever reason, if you're a bubble, I said this other day, if you're a player on the bubble and you make a mistake, you got to own up to all of it, right? You might even get fired if you make one big mistake. Mm-hmm. For whatever reason, the high profile players get grace. They get a ton of grace, and Dak has been receiving that from Mr. Jones, from Mr. Boss Man. And he said, hey, last time he didn't want to put any responsibility on it. It's the receiver's fault. Right? That was last week. It's the receiver's fault. They're not running their routes to the right depth. And this week he doesn't want to say that Dak's in a slump. He's in a slump. It's okay. It's not a bad word. It's something that as a professional you can take that. You get coached hard every single day. I'm not playing up to my standard. My mechanics are off. My decision making is off. And my execution is off. And it's affecting everybody around me. Now, is it just Dak? Absolutely not. Okay, the offensive line playing musical chairs. They can't get things going at the left guard position. Teams are picking on the Connor Bros and Tyler Biotish. That is a gaping hole whenever you're facing. If you're going to say there's a weak spot on the Dallas offense, that's it. Yeah. Right? And so Dak, I think, got pressured. I think we pressured Washington 20 times. I think we had QB pressures. I think they pressured us 13 or somewhere around there. So
he got sacked 4 times in that game.
Yeah. So he's not.
It was not a clean game.
Yeah, it's not a clean game. So he's not able to set his feet back there the way he wants to and regain his confidence that he has lost. So it is multifaceted, but at the end of the day, Dak is in a slump.
Yeah. Yep.
Being in a slump is way better than saying you suck. So I'll take being in a slump.
That's really well means you're actually pretty good,
yes,
and you're just not
going
really
through
well
something right now. Yeah,
that is
so
a really good way to look at it.
They don't suck, and we know they got it. They're just in a slump right now, and they need to get out of it. And I think the same can be applied to a bunch of other players on the offense, maybe not the same level of Dak right now, but you can say that about almost everybody, including these top wide receivers that we got on the team. Now, another thing I wanted to point out, on Monday, it was that we talked about like the mental aspect, and like Nate was talking about it. And, you know, that's something we can't visually necessarily see, but... And I'm not blind. Every week, I look for pictures to upload on the site and things like that. I see Dak. And, like, you can tell. If you've been seeing Dak long enough, you can even see it in pictures, how he just looks different. Like, his confidence is not there. He's starting to now visually show it on his face. I've seen videos of it. So he's definitely going through something mentally where he's just not as confident. And I'm sure, like, what's been happening week after week, when you're not being successful, it creates more pressure on you, and you start feeling it, you know? So hopefully this game against the Giants will allow for him to complete plays, go for it, just regain a little bit of the confidence that we know he has, and it's there, and it's one of the best attributes that he has ever had. He just needs to get it back.
And here's the thing, like, obviously, I know that's your take, and none of us really knows what's going on in his head, because obviously he's the only one who knows what's going on in his head. But I do want to ask you, Isaiah, as a former professional athlete, talk to me a little bit about that mental part of it. What happens, and I don't know if you've been through this, but what happens when you get into that moment where maybe you're doubting your teammates, maybe you're doubting yourself, maybe there are lingering mental things that you're having to deal with from the injury you're recovering from? How do you break through that as a professional athlete on a stage like this where everybody's watching and everybody's looking at you like, man, you ain't the same, you ain't as good?
It's the reason why he gets paid $40 a year. It's because everybody understands the pressures that he's going to be under. Things are going great. It's his fault why things are going great. And he's the reason why. When things are bad, you're seeing it. Everybody's pointing a finger at Dak. And, yeah, he has to figure things out. And the way in which you do that is Kellen Moore has to help him. Kellen Moore has to help him. This offensive line has to help him. They have to give him opportunity. The running game is not where it needs to be. The offensive line is not where it needs to be. This team, in terms of their scheme, it feels like Kellen Moore the bag that he was in is empty, right? He needs to restock that thing. You know, he gave out all the presents. And so it's not just Dak. And Kellen Moore has to find a way to make these concepts a lot easier for him to digest. Okay, teams are going a lot more too high safety, so it's complicating things in terms of his ability to find windows. Why are they going too high safety? Well, because the running game's not going. Teams would never go too high against us before, right? So
they're running against a 7-man box, which is what you want, and they're not being able to do it.
Can't do it, right? That's the offset. You go too high safety to try to stop the pass, right? You go single high safety to try to stop the run, and these teams are going too high safety because they're like, you guys don't have a running game, and Dak's struggling. So guess what? Beat us, and you're unable to the way that you really want to. So he has to build confidence by the concepts. He has to build off some confidence by this running game helping him out. And then when you lack confidence, you want to be precise. When you've made mistakes, he's thrown 5 or 6 interceptions? 6 interceptions in the last 6 games, I believe. Mm-hmm. So when you're making those kind of mistakes, now everything you're second guessing your throws and your decisions. Now, like for instance, on that screenplay, when he should have threw it to Zeke, he didn't throw it to Zeke. So guess what? I'm gonna wait for him to come to the next window, and I'm gonna make sure that my next pass is on point. And guess what? Now it's not.
And by the way, that defender also knows that. So now he's keyed in and just watching you like, oh yeah, throw it now. Yep, throw it now.
Yeah. It's there's this weird thing when you watch him recently where maybe he doesn't trust his receivers, maybe he doesn't trust himself, probably a little bit of both, because he's made some bad throws and there have been some bad drops and things like that. it looks like he wants to go and hand it to the receiver.
Must be perfect.
You know what I mean? And he's not. That should be instinctual. You're like, I see you in this window on this look. I'm ripping it, and he doesn't look like he trusts himself to rip it almost ever. Yeah, they need to get that back. Which I wonder. I know you can't do this for 75 plays, but I'd like to see maybe some more tempo. Probably the best drive of that entire game was the 2-minute. They wound up kicking a field goal, but they went from probably their own red zone or near it down. He had a great completion to Amari over the middle for 18, 20 yards, something like that. They looked natural. They looked more like themselves. And whether it's because you're not giving yourself time to think or because the speed of the offense is throwing the defense off, either way, they look better when they go tempo. They were doing a lot of tempo in the fourth quarter of Vegas because they were trailing. Like I said, I know you can't do that every snap of the game, but maybe try to mix that in a little bit more just as a way of kickstarting things.
People fail to give credit to the running game on this offense. Everybody wants to point to the skill set that's at the receiver position. Everybody wants to point to the fact that Dak, started off the year throwing 50 times and how we can throw it, and Kellen Moore has all these schemes. This team is built on the run. I don't care what you try to do passing-wise. You have to have a running game, and when you don't have a running game, this is the result.
I've fought against that for so long because I do think Dak is good enough to carry it when it's not working. He hasn't been recently, but he's done that before.
Correct.
He did it last season when Zeke couldn't stop fumbling. Like, he can carry you. It's still not a good idea, and there's no denying when you go look at it, their worst rushing performance of that win streak when they were murdering everyone was 122. That was their worst performance. They got to 200 against the Chargers. They were going for 140, 160, 180, that type of thing. And I think New Orleans was their best rushing performance since, and that was 135. And you got the vast majority of that off of 2 big chunk plays instead of just gradually. It's important. Like I said, Dak is good enough to carry you without it, but it's not going to be as pretty or as consistent as it is when the run game's humming.
And everything that could help your running game all of a sudden at the same time is not working, right? Your offensive line isn't doing what they need to do. You've got an injured top running back. You've got an injured second running back. Your quarterback, who usually adds to your rushing total, is not willing to run the ball at the same rate that he was before, and maybe not as effective as it was before. So everything that could contribute to your running game, what we've seen this running game be in the past several years, is all broken at all the same time. And so I don't know quite how Kellen is going to be expected to get that all fixed, but that's the job, right? The job is you got to figure out how to get that fixed. Real quick before we end the show, I did want to move on to one more topic that I wanted to hit. Right now, there is a major outbreak around the NFL with regards to COVID. I want to say the number was at 60-something players over the last 2 days who have now been placed in the COVID protocol. Dallas, miraculously, is not in that situation. They got one player on the COVID list right now. The question for you guys, though, is how capable is Dallas right now to manage an outbreak from the standpoint of their depth? Obviously, they're doing everything they can from the standpoint of their protocols, but do you think they have the right depth to be able to handle an outbreak? Because as you get closer to the playoffs and in the playoffs, I guarantee you there are going to be some playoff games this year that will be affected by COVID. Question will be what teams have the right amount of depth to be able to manage that.
I don't think anybody is equipped to handle. I mean, if it's the right outbreak, the Cowboys got lucky. The outbreak that they dealt with was mainly coaches, which that's not great, but you're not losing people that can play you the game. I mean, Cleveland on paper, they have one of the more talented rosters in the NFL. They got this great O-line. They got 2 of the best running backs in the league. And, they might not be able to field a team because they've lost so many guys. I mean, they lost their quarterback today.
Yeah.
If Dak catches COVID, God forbid, and it seems like he and a lot of these other guys are really going out of their way to keep that from happening. But,
is that the one guy on this team that is the most important guy you couldn't afford to lose?
I mean, ironically, they won a game without him.
Yeah.
But I would still say so. I mean, you got to have a quarterback in this league. But I mean, what if this is just an example? Please don't kill me for this. But DeMarcus Lawrence, Micah Parsons, Trayvon Diggs, and somebody else were hanging out together watching Monday Night Football. They were tweeting about it, Pizza Hut, all that stuff. what if they're all close contacts or transmit it to each other? Again, that's purely hypothetical, but like you have no idea how this thing can get transmitted. I'm sure this new strain, Omicron, is part of it. I hope I said that right.
Yeah, Omicron.
I mean, there's no rhyme or reason to this, so I don't think any team can handle it if you draw the wrong break, you know?
Yeah.
And I just saw, I think, who did I see on Twitter? Todd Archer. He was talking about the possibility of them being in the bubble with the Omni Hotel. So going back to how they were last year at times, so they're starting to look at options to make sure it doesn't happen.
I would check the whole damn team into the Omni tonight.
The challenge with that, though, still is that, you know, even with that, I mean, you will obviously mitigate your risk because there's less exposure, but you can't take risk completely away. There's still going to be people that they're around. Yep. You know, again, when they get on the plane, all of us or some of us are on that plane with them. Like, we're not, I'm telling you right now, I'm not going to stay in the Omni for a month and a half. So I mean, that's not happening. So, and you also got to think about the standpoint, too, of you want your players to be in the right mental state as well. So you tell a guy who is a veteran player that has 2 or 3 kids that now you're not going to be at home with your family for Christmas. I don't know how I feel about that if I'm a veteran player with that kind of setup. Like, I know this is my job, but there's certainly also that mental part of it too. Am I creating more mental stress for myself by not being with my kids and my kids not understanding why I can't be with them for Christmas? Because I'm sitting at a hotel. Like, there's a lot of stuff that goes with that. So it sounds good if you got robots. It doesn't work when you got people.
Actual humans.
You know?
Yeah. I think this team is built for it as long as you don't touch the quarterback and offensive line. I think every other position, linebacker.
This is a defensive team now.
So, I mean,
this is a defensive team now.
You can work, it's a defensive team now. Absolutely.
I'm not
I'm more worried about the defensive
Cardinals
guys.
without Micah or Randy.
Micah's the key, I think, with
But
Arizona.
you might not play the Cardinals with those guys anyway, depending on what happens here over the next game or so.
Yeah, sure.
You're playing that game. You're not sitting guys for Arizona. There's no way you need to sit guys for Arizona. Maybe Philly.
If you don't have a shot at if you have the NFC East secured and you don't have a shot at getting that first round bye, what are you playing that game?
But that's the point.
To avoid
you
the
can't,
loser of the NFC West in the wild card
But both those things can't be true, though. Because if you win the next 2, then you're in position, because Arizona lost Monday night, you're in position at that point, if you beat Arizona, to move at least to the 3rd spot, right? Which matters. Like, you don't have to face the Rams in week 1.
Isaiah's not buying it.
I'm just saying,
this
I'm playing
entire
that game no matter
NFC
what.
is just, this playoff is going to be crazy.
Yeah.
The amount of talent in this NFC is absolutely absurd this year.
I would rather take San Francisco in week 1 than take the Rams in week 1. So for me, I'm playing that Arizona game because I want to at least get to 3. Now, maybe week 17, I'm like, whatever. If you feel like you can get the rest, take the rest. But that week 16 game, that against Arizona, you need that game. You need game 16.
Well, if they beat Arizona, I love getting way out ahead of our skis.
Sure.
If they beat Arizona, the Philly game becomes meaningful. Like, you can't afford to lose that. So, because if you lose to Philly because you sat everybody, then you just give that ground right back, and you can give that seed up.
True. Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying.
So play out the string is the point, in my opinion.
I mean, you might not
suit up. Derek suit up.
You might not have a choice. You might not have a choice.
All right, we appreciate you guys joining us. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll be joined by Bucky Brooks. Hopefully, Nick will be back in studio. But in the day that he wasn't, Isaiah, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, man.
You brought a lot of good perspective. We appreciate that. For Dave Hellman, Amber Garcia, Isaiah Stanback, I'm Derek Eagleton. This has been The Break, live on DallasCowboys.com radio.
This has been a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about this, Cowboys?